As it was in ages past, the world has once again erupted into war. The Kohan, immortal warriors and kings, are raised from the dead by their followers. It is their duty to lead mortal armies against the forces of darkness, and against the traitors who would rebel in defiance of their own divinity. Kohan is a real-time strategy and management game. In it, you take on the role of a titular Kohan, which is a type of immortal, someone with incredible power and magical abilities who, even if slain by violence, can be eventually resurrected with all of their knowledge and memories intact. During the campaign, you will follow one such warrior in a series of missions as he fights a war against an army of evil Kohan who have been corrupted by darkness and who are summoning a legion of undead in order to conquer the land.
But you can't imagine them heading south into the Sea of Fire based on the bad dreams of a newly awakened Kohan. You must hurry now and head southeast to ask for their help.
Like most RTS games, each new mission will present you with a large map where you will explore and battle enemies. Typically, at the beginning of a mission, you will be given a starting city where you can build structures and recruit soldiers. And as you uncover the map and defeat opponents, you will eventually be able to build more of your own settlements or conquer enemy cities in order to expand your territory. While most of the time your basic objective will be to defeat all enemy forces, you will occasionally be given secondary goals such as eliminating an enemy hero or protecting a neutral faction. Now, what makes Kohan interesting and unique amongst its contemporaries is that while on the surface it looks like a traditional RTS game, Kohan adds a number of management subsystems that completely change how you organize your troops and establish your economy. For instance, Kohan has no resource gathering units such as workers or peasants. Instead, all of the resource management is isolated to the towns themselves. Essentially, each city will produce a small amount of basic goods such as gold and wood, and in order to get more, you need to build specialized buildings such as lumber yards, markets, or blacksmiths in order to increase your production capacity. However, each settlement has a limited number of upgrade slots, and in the end, you'll need to choose between building economy upgrades like a quarry or recruitment upgrades like a barracks or academy, without which you cannot recruit advanced units such as swordsmen or wizards. And speaking of units, one of the most obvious distinctions between Kohan and other RTS games is how it handles the recruitment of your armies. In most RTS games, you recruit each of your soldiers one at a time, and they appear on the map as soon as their production is finished. Kohan instead has chosen to employ a more tactical approach, where instead of requisitioning individual soldiers one at a time, you recruit entire unit groups all at once. The groups themselves are comprised of up to 7 soldiers, 1 leader, 4 core units, and then 2 support. And you have a fair amount of flexibility when deciding what kind of troops to include. You can fill the entire squad out with swordsmen or archers if you're just looking for general combat groups, or you can build mixed unit groups with cavalry, spearmen, and engineers for more specific tasks. In addition, if you have the required building upgrades, you can even add advanced units like wizards or clerics, who can deal magical damage or provide secondary bonuses to your troops. But beyond all that, possibly the most interesting and distinctive element of Kohan, even beyond the way that it handles economics and unit management, is the way that the game implements logistics. In most RTS games, your buildings exist to either produce resources or produce units. In Kohan, your settlements fulfill both of those requirements, but they're also responsible for reinforcement and defense. Essentially, each of your cities will project a zone of control around it, and this is important for two reasons. The first is that any enemies getting too close will be attacked by a squad of automated soldiers, essentially giving your towns a minor amount of protection. But the second and more important aspect of these zones is that they're the only place where your squads can heal and replenish fallen units. Your soldiers are only able to regain their hit points when they are standing or moving through one of your zones of control. And this isn't just restricted to squads that have seen action. Each new unit group that you commission only appears on the map with the leader and one other soldier at minimum life. In order to get to full strength, it has to sit in a zone of control, spawning and then subsequently healing each new additional unit. And this logistical subsystem has a huge impact on the way that Kohan plays. The placement of cities is very important, and the loss of even a single unit can have a large tactical impact on the entire squad, since they are no longer able to attack or possibly use their special abilities. Battles tend to take longer, and there are distinct pauses in between combat encounters, as individual units need to be recruited or replaced one at a time, a process which can take almost a minute depending upon the group's composition. Now, here's the breakdown of Kohan. The game is pretty good. Unfortunately, all of its features, no matter how excellent individually, ultimately wind up being tragically flawed in some way. For instance, take the game's presentation. All of the monsters, all of the settlements, all of the magical effects, all of the individual soldiers, they're all highly detailed and well animated. But then, when you get to the level design, a lot of the maps feel very flat. They're filled with a preponderance of empty open fields without any distinction, which makes a lot of the levels feel very similar. The story is another good example. They did a great job establishing this unique setting with immortal heroes and ancient kingdoms, and yet the campaign itself is driven almost entirely by generic fantasy plot hooks. Familiar tropes such as skeletons and armies of the undead, as well as antagonistic heroes that have been corrupted by stereotypical dark magic. But probably the biggest and most inconveniently flawed aspect of Kohan is the combat system. Warfare in Kohan, because of its emphasis on squad management and logistical support, offers a number of unique challenges. But at the same time, because of its unique design, battles in Kohan only really work well on a small to medium scale. That in this game, once you have 10 to 12 different squads participating in a single combat, it gets to the point where individual tactics and positioning no longer apply, because there's simply too many units for that to matter. Now, in most RTS games, this would still be okay, since you could select individual units or groups and micromanage them for a limited effectiveness. But one of the things that makes Kohan a little strange is that you don't have this option. You see, something that I neglected to mention until now is that combat in Kohan is semi-autonomous. That means that when any two squads get close enough together, they will automatically begin fighting, at which point you can no longer tell them to move or give them any orders at all. Troops will only leave combat if either their morale breaks from taking too many casualties, or if you give them manual orders to withdraw, which also reduces their morale. In normal battles, this is part of the strategy, positioning yourself to effectively counter the enemy, and retreating if you know you're at a disadvantage. But in clashes between two large-scale army, neither tactic really applies anymore. Not only are there too many units to judge individual effectiveness, but even if you tell them to retreat, there are just so many enemies and allies surrounding them that often they will literally not be able to escape before being annihilated. All of this combines to put the game in something of an awkward position. Early battles, typically right after you start a mission and only have a small number of squads available to you, are exciting because you have to carefully weigh your different strategic options. But then, after you start winning and accumulating more settlements, resources, and unit groups, large-scale combat becomes an inevitability, at which point strategy becomes more tedious and repetitive. In the end, I would give Kohan 3 out of 4 stars, but a cautious recommendation. As I mentioned in the beginning, this is a strategy game, but also a management game. Your mastery of economics and logistics is just as, if not more, important than tactics. Fans of traditional RTS games would probably be frustrated by the game's unusual subsystems, so I would more likely recommend this to fans of simulation or management games instead. If you're someone who wants to play an RTS but doesn't want to deal with micromanagement, then yeah, this is maybe one to check out. Well, I've once more awakened from the dream, but now it is time to sleep again. To darkness and to rest. Till next time.